Welcome to the last of the Biz.ability series. It's hard to believe another year's almost gone by, Gita, but here we are. But first, I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about SCORE. I see we have a couple of folks who haven't heard my pitch for the last 5 weeks, so I'm sorry for those who have. But we're a volunteer organization, and our job is to help people figure out and about their small business, run their small business in any way we can. So there's 3 things that we do to help people with their small business. First off, we have a lot of mentors. We have over 100 in the Austin area. We have 10,000 nationwide, actually, that are also available to help out. But all of these folks have lots of experience in lots of different areas. And if you've got an issue or you just need somebody to talk to, because, you know, if you're starting a business on your own, it's really great to have somebody else to be in the boat with you. So a mentor is a great way to go. If you go to our website, austin.score.org, you'll find a whole bunch of bios of our mentors online. So you can find somebody who you think you might line up with better, or you can just ask a question and say, find me the best mentor. And the absolute best part of getting a mentor, or maybe the second best part besides a mentor, is it's absolutely free. So if you're looking for some help, that's a good place to start. Second thing is workshops. And as we were just discussing sort of before we got started here, we have a lot of workshops in our calendar. So go take a look at those. You'll find pretty much a topic, a presentation on any topic you can think of in there, and they all are valuable for helping you with your small business. And thirdly, there are some online resources also in austin.score.org or in the national site at score.org. You'll find other archived presentations. You'll find things like templates for business plans, et cetera. So go look for those as well. So that's SCORE. A couple of housekeeping issues. So today we'd ask you to keep your microphones muted unless you're asking a question. It just helps with the feedback a little bit. If you have a question and you don't want to jump in and interrupt Frank in the middle of his presentation, please put it in the chat. And we'll make sure that those will get answered before we're done. We will be recording the presentation today, as you might have heard us discussing. We will send you a link to the presentation after it's finished through an email, and you'll be able to go back and play the whole thing over as many times as you'd like. Okay, so that's about it for me. Gita's got a few words about the library, and we'll be underway shortly. So Gita, your turn.
All right, thank you, Grant, and thanks, Bill, for organizing, bringing all the workshops and organizing Zoom and everything for our last series and the 5 others that just took place. Welcome everyone from the Round Rock Public Library, and I'm Geeta Halley. I'm the Assistant Director here at the library, and we offer, I see several new names again. So I'm just going to quickly go through my library spiel. I know Karen and the others, there are a couple that attend regularly. So I apologize to those who attend regularly to have to hear me one more time. But here's what I would like to, just from the library standpoint, we do Biz.ability. The workshops are called Biz.ability. We run them in partnership with SCORE, and they run twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. This is the fall series. The important thing is one of the main reasons we do something like this in the library, at the library, is mostly also to promote the wonderful and powerful business resources that this public library has. Some of them are so expensive that, and I personally know folks here, definitely one person who paid $3,000 per module. And so there's a lot of good resources that big companies use that we offer to you for free. So this is how you would access the resources here at the Round Rock Public Library. You will need your library card. Library cards, there's at this library, anyone in Texas with a current driver's license can get their library card for free. So there's no charge. You do have to come into the library to get your card, but after that, you can just use all our resources online, including ebooks and e-audiobooks. So here is where the resources are. This is the landing page of the library. The keyword to remember, because the weekend's coming up, you'll forget. Just remember, you're doing, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you're doing research. So from all the different links here, the one word you'll remember is research, and therefore you will go to the research tab here, right up on our landing page. And then you will go to category. There's so many, there's a total of 82 databases that we have here at the Round Rock Public Library. Every library is different. These are the different resources that we have. We have legal forms for you. We have language learning. We have live tutor help for children and young adults, including resume help and interview help as well, live. Through these databases, we have small engine repair, DIY projects here. We have genealogy, and then we have the consumer reports and consumer buying guides are all here. We have lots of study guides for people who take tests. But the important one that you want as a small business owner is this category called business. And I'm just going to quickly run through this. These are the resources we have for small business owners. The three big ones that you want. The first one is this one, Gale Business Plan Builder. It does a really good job walking you through your business plan step by step, making your financial report and just seeing if you have enough money, as well as sometimes it will make you modify your timeline. It's a great resource right here, your business plan builder. The other resource from the same company called Gale is Demographics Now. Very powerful to know the purchasing behavior of people in a particular zip code, in a metro area, what people are spending money on, who lives in those areas. And our librarians have tutorials for each of these databases that I'm talking about. So you can look at the tutorials to get an overview and then dive deep into them. So there's Demographics Now, there's Business Plan Builder. The other one is it used to be called Reference USA. It's now called Reference Solutions. This one, you can look at heat maps, competitor reports, market research, market segmentation. There's lots of stuff here. And one more, those of you who are in the tech industry, you will be familiar with this database called lynda.com. It's the very same database that Microsoft and Google and IBM use to train their employees on the newest software. For an individual user, it costs $19.99 a month, but with your Round Rock Public Library card, you can get it for free. And so here are all the topics that it has. So if you want to learn a new skill, or you want to master something, there's a learning path. At the end of it, you will actually be certified, or you can study for the certification exam through lynda.com. This is what we have. I will answer any questions in the chat. So with this, welcome, Frank, and it's your turn. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thanks for that overview. That is just a spectacular number of resources available to entrepreneurs here in Round Rock and in Central Texas. And it's just hard to believe just that much is available. I mean, effectively, it's all free. Is that right? There's no charge for any of this. Yep, I'm seeing you nod, so we'll take that. So it's all free, right?
Yes, correct. There's no charge. And the important thing is you have to enter to these databases through our website, because otherwise you'll go through the external websites and they'll ask you to pay for them. But you have to go through our portal and then use your library card.
Got it. No, that's wonderful and great to see that available here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Everyone, thanks so much. Real great turnout today, especially as we're getting into the holidays. It's hard to imagine people are shaking this much time loose. My name is Frank Coppersmith. I own a company called Smarter Reality. We do software development, and we work heavily and frequently with entrepreneurs on a whole, basically on helping them build the technology they need for their businesses, whether they're technology first, like an e-commerce platform, or whether it's just some kind of enabling or supporting technology. Today, my topic is going to be all about prototyping. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so we can go ahead and get started. Let me do that. Make sure I'm allowed to do that here. Right. All right, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. A little bit more about just who we are, all the things that we do. You'll be able to get this deck afterwards if you'd like. And I'll, of course, put my contact information in the chat if any of you have any questions or would like some follow-up. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of prototyping. And the first thing I want to say is the purpose of prototyping is to save you money. And this is what I'm trying to do. I am sure, because as an entrepreneur, you have a limited amount of resources. You have limited time, you have limited cash, you have limited everything. And so the most important thing we can do is find ways for you to learn about your market, your product, your service, your customers, anything you can by spending the least amount of money and time as you can. And that's what prototyping is all about. So it comes down to, we talk about why we prototype. We prototype because we want to learn about our markets, and we want to see if we really understand the problem that our solution, whatever it is solving. It also gets to another point. Much of when we think about prototyping, much of that we think about, okay, it's a software prototype. It's an MVP or a beta build. It's some kind of technology. I assure you that now that I've done this talk 6 or 7 times and have talked with many entrepreneurs, I assure you that there are opportunities to prototype pretty much any kind of business. Because when I talk about, and we'll define it a little more in a bit, but when I talk about a prototype, what I'm really saying is, what is the least amount of work you can do to get valuable information back? Now, I love this little picture here of all the ways projects and products can go wrong. I love what the customer asks for, how the salespeople describe it, and what ultimately kind of gets delivered. And you see, there's always all these differences in what people understand. You're going to use these small, bite-sized parts of your project, of your product, of your service, whatever it is, to start trying to figure out, what do customers want? What is my team capable of doing? How do I need to sell it? How do all these pieces come together before you make big commitments? I'll give you an example that came up in another presentation. There was an individual that wanted to start a restaurant. You think about a restaurant, that's a lot of money up front, and there's a lot to figure out. If you've got to sign a lease, that could be a whole year. You've got to buy all this equipment. You've got to get licenses. You've got to build a menu. You've got to hire employees. And what if on the day you open, you discover you're in the wrong place, or you discover your menu's not quite what you need, or you discover there just isn't the foot traffic you were expecting? Well, you're still on the hook for a year. You've spent all this money. You've invested all this effort and time, and you're not going to succeed. You're going to have to radically pivot, and you might not make it. The purpose of this conversation, this presentation, is to get you thinking about ways of how you might test out your product, your service offering, your restaurant plan in a way that doesn't require you to make enormous commitments, right? When I was talking to the individual trying to start a restaurant, we discussed, hey, is there a coffee shop nearby? Can you sit there and look at foot traffic? Would they be willing to sell some of your food as during their lunch rush from like a hot table? Could you start some catering with some signs in that location? What can you do to figure out whether the product and software or service that you're offering really meets a customer need? Well, those are the types of things we're going to talk about today as we go through this presentation. And one thing I will say, if anything comes up, I'm not able to see the chat window the way my thing is set up. So if you have a comment, just go on and unmute, and just go ahead and interrupt and ask me right then. Okay, so what is prototyping? What is all this about? There are lots of different definitions. This is one of many, right? Simplified model of a design. And why are we doing this? Why we want to explore ideas, understand requirements, specs, text, functionality. It's the idea that, hey, how much, I have so many unknowns in my small business, so many things I don't understand. And one of the challenges, it's not a criticism, it's a fact, is that when you're looking at building your business plan, where you're talking to SCORE mentors, when you're talking to all these people on this call, all these resources, candidly, many of them are focused on the ancillary but very important pieces of your business. They'll help you with a business plan. They'll help you with a budget. They'll help you with a marketing plan. They'll help you with an investment deck. All that stuff's important. But the most important thing, the one that is more important than all of those pieces put together, is, am I solving a problem that someone else is willing to pay me money for? Somebody out there has the money that belongs to you in their pocket, and you need to get them to take it out of their pocket and give it to you because of what you're going to give them. But here's the thing. If you have been deeply involved in the design of your business, as you have been, about your product offering, as you have been, as your service, as you have been, well, you tend to fall in love with what you've thought about. I'm that way. I made this mistake in the business I have today. I spent the first year of our business building all these tools so that small businesses and entrepreneurs and clients could easily access all this information about their projects. None of my customers wanted to use that though. So I just wasted all that effort. And if I had maybe tested it, prototyped it, I'd have found out early on what they really needed, what they cared about, what they wanted. That's what you're trying to do. And that's what prototyping is going to help you do as you think about, hey, what really matters to my customer? So all products, especially as you start thinking about this, when you start with your idea, you have an idea in your head. I'm presuming you're not in market yet. But you have an idea in your head. This idea, and I'm going to be candid, is amazing. I know it's amazing because it's in your head. It's beautiful. You know that the market's going to love it. You know that your customers are going to want it. You know you would love it. But the challenge with you right now, it's still in your head. And because it's in your head, there hasn't been a single trade-off. There hasn't been a single trade-off. And because you haven't made any of these trade-offs, you haven't been faced with any type of dealing with transitions, choices between A or B. Everything is wonderful. The part of this prototyping discussion is also part of what we call product discovery. And it could also be service offering discovery. Everything I'm talking about could apply to a services business. I know it all is applicable to mine. Mine is a services business. So let's take a look at this little flowchart, right? We start and you've identified a problem in the market, and that's great. That's really important. And honestly, if you can't articulate a problem, stop now. But you're going to articulate a problem. But here's the problem. You love that problem. They're going to fall in love with it, right? You're going to say, this is the problem. But no, don't be certain that that's exactly the problem you're going to solve. You don't know if your customers, you don't know if consumers are going to react to it the way you want them to. And it has to be a problem that's big enough, that hurts enough, that people are willing to pay money to solve it. So you've got to get it written down. You've got to get it kind of documented. Then you got to go and try to validate it. How do you validate it? Well, you start observing, you start looking to people who might be experiencing that problem. And how do they get to the next point? How do they solve it? How do they deal with it now? Is it something that's a lot of pain, or is it just a little bit pain? So then we start talking about, and this slide talks about building a prototype at the end. But a prototype can be very, very thin. It could be as simple as a slide deck, where you're starting to show consumers, show potential users what it is that you're doing. You start going out and talking about it. I love working with entrepreneurs where we actually just take some concept art, bake it into PowerPoint, make it a little bit interactive, and they go out and try to sell it. Why? Because they want to hear what customers have to say. That's so critical to understanding that and getting that voice of the customer back with you. So you start promoting it to people, and is anyone interested? right? You write it down. Is anyone telling you that you're interested? And now it comes down to, hey, we really need to actually start testing this. We have to start thinking about what do we put in front of our users, our consumers, our buyers, and see how they react. And how little of that can I do? And that really where it leads us to this last piece where we're actually going to think about establishing a prototype. Slide says build a prototype. If you're doing hardware or software, that's what you do. If it's a service offering, it might be sharing your menu with your friends. It might be offering your services part-time out of your garage. Anything you can do to try to get a test of how people are going to react to what it is you're bringing to market. So this next slide here, you've seen these. If you haven't, you can Google them. I'm only going to touch on a couple pieces here. This is a product discovery canvas. It talks about all the different things. And again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this is not really the purpose of today's talk. The purpose of today's talk is really drops down to the last two, number 7 and 8. What am I building? What service am I bringing to market? And how are people going to react to it? So take a look at 7. It talks about validation. Hey, is this the right thing that my customers, that actually meets my customer need? Can I find out if customers want it? Can I find out if customers will pay me money for it? And then this somewhere between 7 and 8, I want to sit down with some of those customers I'm talking to and really try to identify what is the smallest element of my business that I can carve out and say, you know what, this really meets a need. Let's take, for example, someone who might be thinking of starting a martial arts studio. It sounds like a lot. That sounds really cool. If they're an expert teacher in the martial arts, they might want to create a studio, but they're going to have to get insurance, going to have to rent space, going to have to do all these things. The interesting question for them might be, do people want to work with me as their teacher? Because that's how I know if people are going to come back. Can I do that from my garage? Can I do that from shared space? Can I borrow someone's location for 6 months, for 3 months, every Tuesday night? And can I generate any interest from customers? You see what I didn't have to do there if that's my prototype, right? I didn't have to sign a lease. I didn't have to buy any hardware. I maybe didn't have to get any insurance, or maybe I got a little bit of insurance. Again, it's about what is the smallest piece. And then I come back and I take that feedback from those users and it gets fed right back into this process. Okay, what did I learn? What did they tell me? Did they tell me I'm missing an important piece of the offering? Am I giving them too much? And the piece we'll hit on a little bit later that I think is absolutely critical. How do you price? How do you price? Price is not related to how hard it is for you to deliver it, or even what costs go into your product. It's about the benefit your consumer, your user, your customer gets. You can offer that great benefit, then you're in a place they'll pay you more money. Now, there's a lot more on this product discovery canvas. I encourage you to look at all of it, but you can just Google that and it'll pull up all the instructions you will ever want on this topic. But these are really, really useful ways to get started. So what is prototyping more generally? It's not really an end, right? We're not building a prototype and then we're done. It is a means to an end. It's just to find out everything we're doing wrong. I think back to my own use case, my own experience. I built all these portals for my users. They still exist. None of my customers use them. I don't even tell them about them anymore. Why? Because it just didn't meet their needs. All my customers have unique needs about reporting and data, what they need for their business in their situation, and I just have to flex to that. So all the work I did on all the reporting systems and all the portals, all worthless, all a waste of my time. Terrible. I didn't even learn my own lesson in that. Fortunately, not fatal, which is good news. This is the other piece. Without prototyping, you are basically doing faith-based capitalism, faith-based entrepreneurship, faith that you've got it right. And here's the truth. You don't have it right. None of us have it right. None of us know how our products or services are going to meet in the market. So what are we doing with prototyping? We're going to figure out what is wrong while there's lots of time to fix it and you still have money. We go back to our example of the person opening the restaurant. If they sign a lease, install the equipment, hire the employees, kick off the menu, and then find out there isn't enough foot traffic, there isn't enough parking, there's something wrong with the location, at least for this type of restaurant. There's no time to pivot. They've used up all their money. They don't have the resources they need to try again. Entrepreneurs succeed not by succeeding, but by not failing. If no one's told you that, this is an important lesson for you, and it falls back to prototyping. You succeed by just staying in business, by getting to play the game again and again and again, with the idea that as I learn more, as I launch more services, I tweak my product, I have a higher chance of success because I'm learning about my user, I'm learning about my customer, I'm coming to better understand the problem that I'm trying to solve. This is what prototyping is about. It's about how can I figure out what's wrong with my product, my service, how am I going to try to fit how am I going to find that product market fit? So what's a prototype? It's just something you can test. You build just enough that you can test it. You think about airplanes, right? The Wright Flyer didn't have any of the things that we think of in a modern airplane. The only way it was able to turn was they warped the wings. The only way it could climb, they actually kind of leaned back in the airplane, leaned forward in the airplane, right? It was a minimal viable product to building an airplane, but it worked. It proved that heavier than air travel was possible, and then the rest followed. And now, of course, airplanes are a whole lot more sophisticated. But the bottom line is they were able to get up into the air and into market with a very, very simple design. That's really the challenge for you. The thing to take away from this talk, and you've got to go, you can drop off after this one. This is the lesson. What is the absolute smallest version of whatever you're trying to do that you can put in front of users today? Can you build a website on Squarespace using images you get from Google? I'll give you an example. We have a customer right now that we're working with. They started with just a web landing page. Now, we did build it because we put some functionality into it, but it was just a landing page that says, here is the cool thing we're working on. If you want to learn more, sign up at the link. And they got a lot of signups. That web page was not very expensive. That was a great way for them to learn all about their market. And now they've got like 1,000 emails they can start dripping on people with an email campaign. They can reach out and say, would you like to talk to me about this project, this problem, this product I'm building? Again, it's back to what is the smallest, earliest testable version that gives you data. That's the last piece, right? Testable. It has to be just enough that you can actually get good information on it. That is, hopefully, you have aligned the minimal features that you're going to build or offer with the problem that your consumers are facing. Why build it? Well, we've talked about this already a little bit, but it's worth seeing visually. We want to do it quickly. We want to do it cheaply. We want to do it easily, right? You don't want to wait. Every day that passes that you invest in your project, you invest in your business, is if you later find out that you are doing the wrong thing, that is potentially money wasted and money you no longer have available. Again, I work with the assumption that everyone on this call has limited investment. Whether it's investment of time or money is immaterial, they're effectively the same thing. So if you're able to discover, say, in the next month or two, that your service offering isn't quite right, and it's probably not, no fault of you, you can't know until you've gotten in front of customers, then it's simple enough to say that you want to do that as quickly as you can. The longer you wait, the more you have to spend in either time or money to course correct. And in doing that, again, you may find yourself simply out of time and out of money, and your business may not succeed. We talked about prototype. This really comes out of a software slide deck. It's pretty obvious. Obviously, if I figure out the problem while I'm doing definition and requirements gathering, get that early phase, fixing it, if we have a problem, costs almost nothing. Same with design. Even in development, it's fairly low cost to flex. Where things really get expensive and painful is if we're kind of done. We're kind of done and we're in testing, or worse, we've actually put it and finally got it in front of users, and we shipped our thing up. It's glorious. It's done. It's shipped. It's out. We all clink our glasses together and drink our champagne, and no one uses it. No one uses it. I was talking to a company, well, some investors to a company not that long ago, and this is a software company. I won't go into who or exactly what product they were building, but the bottom line, they have spent about $3.5 million every year for 10 years, and they only have a few thousand users on their product, on their platform. What happened? Well, they basically have always believed inside that they knew what was right for their customers. They're like, we're going to offer this, customers are going to see the value in it, and they're going to flock to us. But if you build it, they will not come. That's not how it works. And at no point during this $35 million journey did anyone just go, well, you know, nobody's using this thing. We need to rethink everything we're doing. They absolutely believed in themselves, which is an important part of being an entrepreneur. But they were unwilling and unable to really look at the feedback they were getting from their consumers and their users. And honestly, all the people who were saying, we don't want to use your product, and go, hey, we got to change. We got to change our direction. So they ended up all the way at the end of this slide where now changes are going to be shockingly expensive. They really basically have to start over. And that's a terrible, terrible place to be. And I don't want any of you to end up there. So the other reason that I like prototypes is if you're at some point are going to have to explain to someone, investor, family, customer, what you're doing. And you know, I love talking to entrepreneurs all day, and they have these amazing ideas, and every idea is just wonderful and glorious, and I love it. The challenge we run into though is how do we explain what we're doing to someone who doesn't share our vision today? One of the ways to do that is with a prototype. Now, a prototype can take on a lot of forms. It can be a Word document, absolutely. It could be like we see here down below. It could just be some wireframing laying out what something might look like. Again, it depends on the sophistication of the people you're speaking to. It could be a PowerPoint that has really nice concept art, really looks like what you're going to do, and it's interactive like it was real. It's just not. It's just not. So you've saved all that effort. It's just something you can show to people. I'll talk about an example we did for a company when they were headed into South by. They got in a booth. They were 30 days out. We'll talk about what we built for them. It could be in the case of like a service offering. Are you having your friends and family over to try your menu before you launch your restaurant? And more importantly, are you inviting people over to try your menu who are not your friends and family, who will tell you what they really think of your awful tacos? That they're not, yeah, it's okay, but that's not the best taco I've had. Yeah, that's the wrong answer. Or the service offering you're going to bring. And so it's a great way as you think about a prototype. How am I going to show this and explain this to someone? It could be a video. It could be a video that you build that you're putting in front of users. Maybe not a sales pitch per se, but something that's really focused on that product market fit. What is my product and how am I solving this problem? Okay, so this comes out of the software industry, but I'll be honest, I think it applies everywhere. It really does. Everybody goes through these phases. It's just, this is a little software heavy. You start at the beginning, right? You've got these ideas. I'm having a brainstorm. This is brilliant. And I start gathering what I describe on the software side as requirements. All the stuff I got to understand. You know, you think about our folks who are someone maybe opening up a restaurant. They got to think about location and square footage and tables and how many employees they have and what kind of food they're going to sell and who's going to buy this food and how many of those people live within 5 miles of the location, right? That's that initial piece. Then you're going to start thinking about, man, I'm going to do some designs. I'm going to prototype. Man, I really just want to figure this out. I got to get going. The rest of this is where you start implementing. You start spending a lot of money. We don't want you spending that money. We want you just stopping in that early stage, that design phase. I want you to iterate in there as much as you can before you move on to development. Hey, I love software development. It's how we make our living. But we need you to start right there and really figure out what problem you're solving is and how your product is going to fit into it. Oops. So what are we going to do? This is an example of a prototype that we built on the right side here for an individual in the e-commerce space. So this individual whose idea was very straightforward, she says, look, I'm a professional. I have all these high-end professional clothes. Sometimes I don't wear them. A lot of times I buy stuff, it's still new with tags. I don't need it. I can't sell it. I just want to trade it with other women predominantly in my professional class. She was in the National Capital Region up there in Northern Virginia. And she goes, we get together sometimes with all our friends and we just drink wine and we're like, look, I've got a top that'll fit you. And they exchange. She goes, I want to bring that to a platform. But she didn't have any money. She can't build it. The cost to build this was going to be just right at the low six figures. And said, okay, let's see what we can do for you. We did our product design discovery process, worked her through top to bottom to really understand what she was trying to explain, what problems she was trying to solve, what she wanted to put in front of people. We put all of that inside a little interface, a little experience that she could show on a phone or on a laptop screen. And then we cut her loose to go out and fundraise, and she was able to raise the money for it. Why? Because she was able to connect her passion, her personal expertise, her lived experiences, right? The life she lived with the problems she understood and the product she was going to put against that problem. Great stuff. Bring it all together. And I mean, the prototype was not expensive. Thousands of dollars, not tens, thousands of dollars. That's a big deal. And so she was able to basically show it to people. Now, it didn't do anything. We didn't have any actual functionality. It was mostly just look and feel, but it was a way for her to share with other people. And in sharing it, what was she able to do? Well, first of all, she was able to really, I'll hit them here, right? Visualize the solution. It's one thing to say, I've got this idea for an e-commerce platform that'll let people exchange clothes without having to pay money. It's just basically a trading platform. Okay, that's great, but I can't visualize it. Now you can visualize it. She could answer questions about it. When she's talking to investors, she could also start putting that design in front of some of her potential users, some of the people she's met through some of these social experiences, and validate, hey, would you use this? Oh, yes, I would much rather use this. Then I could do it anytime and I don't have to wait 6 months before we have one of our opportunities to trade. Oh, that's a big deal. That's a big discovery, right? And then the last piece is, if people had told her, I don't like this, I would never use it. What if she'd shown this to 20 people and 20 people said, no, I would never use it? Well, she hasn't spent very much money. She hasn't invested too much time. She can go back and has plenty of time and money to rethink about this. Powerful, powerful stuff here. We talk about how we want to prototype. And I can't answer how you should prototype for your business, but this is the kind of stuff you should be thinking about. What are the benefits she gets? So let's talk about this next one here. This next one was a client that really wanted to build a piece of technology that would allow people to have more interaction when they came to basically a baseball game. Now, if you may not know this, but baseball has been struggling the last really 30 years with attendance and with people watching it. One of the reasons, obviously, baseball's not, isn't super interactive, but there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff that could be driven. This was a way for people attending a game or watching the game on TV to interact with that game through contests, through merchandise, through some betting, that maybe not real money, all the different kinds of things that they could do. So just made the experience more interesting. They just through some concept art and pitching had a chance to present this to the Houston Astros, but they didn't have anything to present. So what do? Well, we take our concept art, we stick it on top of a game engine, which is fast to develop for, and we give them something that they can actually show. This one with all that interactivity, with things working under the hood, not quite as inexpensive, but it let them do a bunch of different things. They could actually show a working-ish version to a potential customer to really gauge market interest. You could also show that, hey, look, we can get things built. Look, I'm not just someone making stuff up. We have a pathway to actually getting something launched. You go back to maybe our restaurant example, being able to show people, look, here's the food. Here it all is. Here's the entire menu. Oh, that gathers, you gather a certain confidence from that this person can pull this off. Also helps you address scope. What do you really need when you launch? How much do you want? Here's the thing, in your idea, way back at the beginning, we talked about your concept, your idea, right? That initial brainstorm that you're doing. You have so many great ideas about your business. So many great ideas. but you can't execute them all. What goes first? What goes second? You can use a prototype to help figure that out. Okay, this is great. This needs more baking, and this is just not ready. Okay, you'll figure out what goes first. And a little bit product feasibility, though I think less important for most people. There is less tech risk out there. I tend to think for most people, product feasibility might just be, can you afford to get into the market? And restaurants are going to be $250,000, $500,000 to get into, right? Software projects, 100 grand, 50 grand, right? There's just different levels. You can think about, you can kind of figure out what you need and start trying to price it out, whether you can actually build it. So what do we want to do? What's a good prototype? Okay, what is a good one? So quick, cheap, testable, measurable, minimal. I think I've kind of hit on this broadly, but all of this comes down to, I think the quote on here is, you don't care if it gets thrown away. It's not important to you because it's just a prototype. It's just a way to test. So a little bit about this particular design. So what you're looking at is a design that came from a client where we were working with them. They had a great idea. Their idea was, we want to take the enormous, the ease of use, the ease of interface, the fun that you find in games like The Sims, or you build like houses and put people in them, and have that kind of front end to an actual CAD CAM system, which is not fun, not easy to use, huge barriers to entry, because they just felt that people want to renovate their homes, they want to do lots of work, and then they go, oh, but this is really too hard to figure out. And they said, we can make this easier, and we agreed. These are our friends who went and had a successful South by Southwest. So they were making some progress towards their goal. They basically got a South by Southwest booth and realized, man, that's in 30 days and we have nothing to show. Okay, let's see if we can help them out. So we came up with some concept art. We put the concept art in PowerPoint. We put hot links around the PowerPoint so they can move through it as if it were a real product. And then they throw that up on a 50 or 70-inch television. And they go, here's what we're building. They got enormous, enormous interest from South by, just huge, huge, and very, very exciting. They made enormous progress, and it led them to a lot of really great things. Now, was that, did they need it? Did they need to reuse any of that work? No, they could throw all of it away. It got exactly what they needed done. Did it help them test because they could put it in front of people? Absolutely. Were they able to really get a better understanding of their product? Absolutely, absolutely. So how complex does it have to be? Where do we have to go with this? So it really comes down to, you may have multiple prototypes at different stages of your, honestly, of your lifestyle, the business life cycle. Early prototype might not be anything more than some drawings in PowerPoint. Later prototype might be a whole lot more interactive. You go back to our friend building the karate dojo. Your first prototype might be in their garage, and they do individual private training through Craigslist. Second prototype might be they rent some time from another karate or another martial arts studio. Maybe they're teaching an unusual martial art, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And there's no BJJ site in this city, bunch of karate places. Well, maybe one of the karate places will give you Sunday night, right? If you rent it from them. What can you do to test? What can you do to test? So what are your goals? So what are your goals with prototyping? How are you going to use it? What do you want to learn? How do you communicate it? This is a big one. So let's take a look at this health sciences example. This was a prototype that grew into a full versioned product. So a little bit different. This company had a technology called microwave ablation. You insert some probes into a body of someone who has cancer. Like, cancer is mostly in nodules, like little hard knots sitting on top of an organ. And effectively, the technology microwaves it and kills it. It's kind of like magic because there's no surgery involved, really. The challenge was that physicians struggled with the system because the mathematics behind a microwave interference pattern is super complex. And doctors are like, no, I can't do that. I don't have time. So we built them a simple prototype on a mobile device, on an Android phone. They could literally hook onto their 7-figure piece of hardware that cooks this cancer. And the doctors could just enter in the extents of the tumor and its location, and it would spit out the power settings. I mean, it was pretty simple. this was a prototype because they weren't sure if doctors would use it. And what they really wanted to do is go back and re-engineer this entire piece of healthcare hardware. But that was going to be tens of millions of dollars to do it. So before they did that, the prototype was, can we just stick it on an Android phone and glue it onto the side of the box? You sure can. And that's what we built for them. And it worked incredibly well. They found that the surgeons absolutely loved it because they only had to enter like 4 data points right on the screen, hit go, there's the data. They could scroll around, look to see if it was what they wanted, and then they could set the machine settings. It was glorious. And they spent tens of thousands of dollars instead of 7 figures to find out if doctors would actually do it. So lots of different types of prototypes. It really comes down to 2 categories. How finished does the prototype have to be? How finished does it have to be to really get the data you need? And then how attractive does it have to look? That's functionality versus, say, interface. This is, again, a little more software focused, a little bit more product focused. You may have a different experience depending on the product you're working on, but it really depends on who are you trying. If you're just trying to prove up the technology internal, or prove up kind of, okay, I can cook these meals, or yeah, I can teach at least one person how to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you don't need a whole lot. It can be really ugly and very little functionality. Now, if you're trying to make sure, like in the case of technology, that this learning algorithm, is this algorithm going to even do what I want it to do? Oh my gosh, it's really hard. I don't need to show it to anybody yet. I'm doing it internal. I'm testing logic. I just need to have it really complete, and I don't have to worry too much about things like user testing. I've got an error on my computer. Hopefully you can still hear me. Hopefully my internet's still working. Next up here is I've got, if it's really high fidelity, it really looks nice, it's really feature complete, that's what you're putting in front of end users for the most part. This is a product demo. And then the last piece up in that upper left-hand quadrant, if I'm just trying to pitch it, maybe I just need it to look really nice. And of all of these, the one thing I have learned is, for the most part, that's the quadrant to live in. People are visual. People are visual. Unless you desperately need to prove up something that's very hard, they really want to see how something looks. You come back to your restaurant example, restaurant interior concepts, pictures of a menu, photographs of food, photographs of the location. That's what'll sell that restaurant. That's what'll work. That's what'll get people excited. Oddly enough, maybe not actually the tacos. Some lots of other examples. I love this one, the one on the left side. This was a tool for companies to basically schedule home healthcare workers. Very, very simple on the front end. They wanted to test this thing. Will people actually use a tool to schedule healthcare workers for home healthcare? But the problem was building a sophisticated scheduling engine underneath the hood, painful, like a big engineering lift. We proposed to them, wait a second, why don't we just build the interface? You are scheduling manually today. Right now, today, you schedule manually, okay? Why don't we just build you a digital interface? The customers will never know that you're just manually scheduling underneath the hood. That's why we have the picture of the duck. None of their customers need to know that the duck is paddling crazy underneath. What they were able to test was the market case. Will my consumer, instead of calling me or sending me an email, will they use a virtual interface on their phone or on a laptop? And the answer was yes. And then that led them to build the sophisticated engineering underneath the hood. The last one here is this mobile app. This is one I kind of taught myself accidentally out of the business. There's a process called dressage where you ride a horse and it's you get certain instructions and you have to perform certain moves with that horse. Typically, you have to pay someone to read you instructions because there was a set of formal instructions, and that costs money. You have to find someone to read it. The rings where you practice might be noisy, so maybe you don't hear them calling you the commands. So the question was, could someone just have a mobile app, drop in their phone, put in their earphones, and then listen to the circuit? Absolutely. The individual wanted to test this before we invested in building it. We said, well, why don't just a recording on your phone? That's what she did. And that's what she did. And she found good traction on that. I actually think that ultimately met her need. I actually think that solved the problem. And they ultimately, I don't think we ever built the app. And that's okay. Because again, we solved that problem for them, even if she was able to solve it very, very easily. So how do you get started with prototyping? I will be honest, this one probably leans a little bit over into software. And for that, I apologize. This is a little bit of a software solution, and I'm sorry about that. These are all kinds of tools you can use. The pictures you see there on the right are a platform called balsamiq. No real recommendation there, except I like to use it. It's really easy. But there's all kinds of tools that allow you to take your ideas and make them very visual. I think tools like PowerPoint or Photoshop or Apple's version of PowerPoint, which I think is called Keynote, you can take images you Google and drop them into a deck in a flow that is indicative of what you're trying to do. I think it can be a very powerful prototype, very powerful way to help identify what it is you need to do. All these tools are usable, but the only one that's obsolete here is Flash. I don't think anyone uses Flash anymore. Lots of ways to get started. So if you are thinking about any type of software, I will say that balsamiq is an amazingly easy to use tool. I don't work for them. I don't get paid money for them. I pay my subscription to use it. And one of the reasons I like balsamiq is none of it looks final. One of the challenges, you come up here, you look at tools like Adobe XD, Axure, Photoshop, some of these others, the stuff looks really great and that's awesome. But then people think you're really done. And what you really want to do is you want to convey the story without actually conveying that it's finished. You really want to still leave lots of room for iterative development. And you can see, these are mostly grab and go images. You can just drag and drop into a PowerPoint to help better explain your product so that users can understand it. So let's talk about the wrap up, and then we're going to open up to questions. We're going for about an hour. I want to make sure you leave plenty of time for questions. I see lots of things in the chat. I'll get that opened up. What are we doing in prototyping? We're testing, we're learning, we're practicing, we're doing everything we can to learn as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and spending as little money and as little time as we can. We're trying to connect the problem in the market with the need of our customer. That's the important connection. And can we do that? And have we done that? And are we doing that successfully? That's a big deal. And that's really where we want to spend a lot of our focus. It can lead to a lot of different directions, right? I can come over to, how are my users responding? And are they asking me interesting questions? Am I able to respond to those questions? Do I know the answers? Do I have to do further research? Then am I able to refine my plan? So again, prototyping only works if you are open to change. You have to approach this prototyping process with the understanding that, hey, my ideas may be different. Hey, I'm going to learn stuff and I'm going to have to go a different way. Hey, this is not working. And that's okay. I can't stress to you how important it is to understand that most of your product ideas will not survive contact with your consumer and with your user. Don't be embarrassed by that. You're doing the absolute right thing by getting in front of them as early as you can to get the information you need. So that wraps up about where my talk is. I don't think there's anything else. We've talked a little bit about this already. I guess on this last slide, the only thing I will add to is it really comes down to that product market fit. You've got to identify the problem you're solving. Do I solve that problem? Do I solve that problem in a way that customers will pay me for it? And in my mind, the only way to do that without spending a lot of money and taking on a lot of risk is by developing a prototype. So I'll stop there, turn it back over to Grant or Bill. Again, I always enjoy having this chance to talk to everyone. And I definitely want to respond to any questions on chat. So let me stop sharing my screen and I'll look at any questions that may have come up.
I think most of the comments on chat were from Sherry. Thanks very much, Sherry. She was kind of summarizing your slides and giving everybody a quick summary of the pertinent information. So not a whole lot of questions there, but anybody else got a question, please take yourself off mute and ask Frank.
Sorry, I do
Frank,
have a question. I was just,
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I do have a question. If we're doing a physical product, I mean, how do we go about finding someone to actually do a prototype for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple ways to approach it. The first is it depends on what your product is and how much of your product actually has to work versus just you can kind of fake it. Is what you might be able to find in these various maker spaces all over the country, where there are people who are, where there's all these different tools, 3D printers and other things that you can find access to, and you probably find some folks in there. The other thing is there are companies, and there's one here in Austin I've worked with, the name is just escaping me, I'm sure I could dig it up, that builds prototypes for consumer products for people like you. And they have two models. Model one is you just pay to have them build it. Model two is you pay a lot less and they take a piece of your product opportunity, depending on how they value it.
Okay.
And they do that. I know those exist because I work with them. We do a lot of what you just described, but exclusively on the software side. We don't build hardware, but we do what you just asked for software. But that's my take.
Can I throw a
Okay,
plug in
thanks.
here for a school mentor too, Frank, that if you're in a situation and you want to do one of those, go find a school mentor. There are quite a few folks on the school mentor list who have technical backgrounds and what have you, can help out with prototyping prototypes. How's that for a new category, Frank?
Yeah, exactly. And I really want to come back to it doesn't have to work to be a prototype. It can be fake, and you can fake it everywhere. We have had so much enormous luck with customers, helping them with just concept art and PowerPoint that's interactive, that looks like working software. And they tell them it's a prototype, right? You don't go try to sell that per se, but I'm just telling you, it just transforms the conversations you have with potential investors and potential customers. And so the question back to you, Michelle, might simply be, how much can you fake? How much can you just fake under the hood and have it kind of be representative? And I don't mean that negatively. I mean, it's be representative of your solution.
Great, thanks.
I see a direct message. It says, do you use design thinking in your prototyping life cycle? So I'll give you my take on it. And I don't know if I use design thinking the way you might be using it. I do most of the product design for my company. And I focus around, again, so this is kind of a software focus, but it's what's called a user story. I try to identify everyone who's going to touch this product in some way, and what do they want to do? What do they need from this product? Do they need to log in? Yep, they do. Do they need to enter their username? User stories. That's right. That's where I focus all my attention. And because if I do that, and I dig through all of those user stories, I'm an administrator of this product. I need to be able to see how many people have logged in. I'm an administrator. I need to see how many hours people spent on it. I'm a free user of this product. I want to be able to do some minimal functions. I'm a paying subscriber of this product. I want access to all the advanced features, things like that. And that helps me understand what my consumer wants. And then that translates into our design, because the design should answer all those user stories. The answer should be yes, you can do all of them, and here's how you do them. I'm not a UI, user interface, user experience designer. We have people on staff that do that who are excellent at doing that exact look and feel. So let me see, there's some other things in chat. See some things from Sherry here, looking at them. Yeah, you have to be able to, I would say the biggest challenge here is people fall in love with their products. I jokingly say that when I work with entrepreneurs, that I crush their dreams. I don't mean that intentionally. What I mean by that is the idea in your head is perfect because it doesn't face any trade-offs. It doesn't face a trade-off of time. It doesn't face a trade-off of money. It doesn't face a trade-off of user or platform. And when I start going, well, do you want it on Android and iOS? Do you need it on tablet and phone? Oh, and you want it to run on a PC. And it has to run on this other thing over here. Okay. And it has to have, when you start adding in all those things, it's suddenly like, I'm great. I'm happy to build that for you. That's going to be $3.4 million. And I'm going to need 2 years. And oh, I only have $100,000. Okay. That's not a problem. Let's talk about what you can really conceivably get $100,000. It could still be really useful. But again, sometimes the idea in your head has not faced any type of trade-offs or restraints. As a job hunter, are you a product and put yourself through a product life cycle? That is really interesting. I don't know. I don't know if I would like considering myself a product. I do think as a job hunter, user stories might be really interesting. What I mean by that is, how do the things that I bring to the table line up with the user stories that my potential employers might have? If I'm being hired for an accounting associate position, as an accounting associate, I have to be able to, enter bookkeeping entries, use QuickBooks at an introductory level, run reports out of QuickBooks, do revenue recognition. If I can't answer, if I'm applying for those types of jobs, I should be able to answer yes to most of those. And so I think there's some interesting applicability there.
Frank, this thought isn't fully formed in my head, so it may not come fully formed into a question, but I'm thinking a lot about how the pandemic has reshaped so many of the things that need to be done, and looking for and identifying opportunities as well as problems is one part. The other thing is, are there things that you see emerging from the standpoint of prototyping, test audiences, if you will, or some kind of way to use crowdsourcing in a prototype kind of format?
Yeah, that's a really neat question. Can I prototype my consumers? I think the answer is yes. I think you've hit on some of the crowdsourcing, but I'm going to go where I find it valuable. And as much as I'm not sure I'm a fan, but Facebook offers you the opportunity to do very targeted, very inexpensive marketing, which can drive people to a landing page or even just a Facebook page. And you can find out all about people's interest in the keywords you might use and the images you might use to see what kind of, if you think your product appeals to men between the ages of 35 and 50, and you put together art and copy and other content relevant to that, and you start advertising it to those types of individuals, because Facebook allows really focused advertising, well, what kind of response do you get? Is it better than average? Is it good? Is it bad? And so I think you can do a lot of prototyping with that. Crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. And this is, my experience with those is people who have success on those types of platforms already have a pretty big audience. That is, you cannot crowdfund something if you do not bring your audience to the crowdfunding platform. Just that simple. So crowdfunding is step 2. You already have to establish some community before you go to a crowdfunding site. Because the way the crowdfunding sites work, they don't surface your product, service, whatever, to the broader community until they see you have some traction. So, and I have smashed so many people's dreams who are like, we're going to crowdfund this. I'm like, how many people are in your mailing list? They go, 100. I'm like, you're not. You're not. You need like 25,000, right? 10,000, 20,000. And you need to get a couple hundred of those who are willing to put 10 or 20 bucks down the day you launch that campaign. So that's my take. I see some other questions here. Would you do a prototype to curate subject matter content for students, users overseas? I mean, I think you could. I think you can prototype anything. I think that if you can identify student users overseas, you have a pipeline to them. You could absolutely offer them different sets of content and see how they respond, and do it without necessarily actually having that content in place. Easy way to do it is a sign-up page, a landing page. It says, here's the content we're offering. Give us your email and click these radio buttons for the topics, items, subject matter that you're interested in. If nobody clicks item number 4, don't offer it. All right, if you get 100 people to visit that site and give you an email, that's actually pretty good data. Let me come back on. I skipped over something. Are there things you see emerging? Test audiences, someone use crowdsourcing. I think we have addressed that. Question about patents or using confidentiality agreements. So yes and no. The big issue around patents is outside the US, once you have sold your product or offered it for sale, you can no longer seek foreign patents. It's called the on sale bar. You still get a patent in the US because we just treat patents a little bit differently. And so that presents an issue once you've really offered it for sale, if it matters. Confidentiality agreements, yes, though, like myself, no company is going to sign a confidentiality agreement that builds these types of things that says they won't build something similar, because candidly, everything's kind of the same in tech, in services, right? Everything's kind of the same. They'll happily sign it that they will not use your information specifically or anything they've built for you. And we would sign that. So I think there's some value in NDAs or confidentiality agreements. Let's see new messages. How might you use a product lifecycle for services, such as visual designing, coaching, mentoring, tutoring? So if I come back to product lifecycle, so I'm going to look at it. What I wanted, so think about, so let's say I'm going to pick one. I want to pick like coaching or tutoring. How do you prototype coaching or tutoring? So how I might prototype is a couple ways. I presume that you're prototyping because you have some different directions you might go. If you only really have one product, then you might want to test that. One service offering, you might want to test it. But I'm going to presume that you could either be a mentor or a tutor, or maybe a coach or a tutor, and they're a little bit different. You're going to tutor these specific subjects, or you're going to provide coaching at a higher, broader level. So the way you might want to prototype that is build landing pages for both using different URLs, different look and feel, and then you use Facebook advertising, which is inexpensive, to the markets you think are interesting. Maybe it's the same demographic in both cases, and look at the response. Does your tutoring page, when you spend $100 on Facebook advertising, you drive 1,000 people to that page, or you put your ad in front of 1,000 people, you get 50 click-throughs. If 50 click-throughs on mentoring, you get 10 signups. 50 click-throughs on tutoring, you get 25 signups. And you know which one is reacting better to the market, which one looks like it has the most value. That's kind of how I would use it. See, there seems to be other questions. There are many more questions there. Content. Okay. I don't know that I see any other questions.
No, I think
Grant or Bill, any other questions out there?
I don't see any more, Frank. So, last call for questions, folks, or we'll wrap up. Well, thanks, Frank, for a very informative talk. I lived this process for 40 years, so it's kind of, you're bringing back old memories, Frank. And I certainly remember the time I did a prototype too well and got stuck with a product that I didn't really have, so, from a VP. So yeah.
It's funny right now. I'm working with a customer who basically wildly oversold their prototype and actually signed customer sales agreements.
My Lord.
and they were like, we can't believe that people really want this really badly. I'm like, well, that's great. When are you supposed to have this for them? Like, they want to start it right away. And I'm like, wait, we did that concept art. Have you done the engineering? No.
Haven't started.
No. I'm like, we got to get rolling. And they're like, yeah, we do. So, right. But that's great, right? Because that's the problem to have. I'll go back to I had a company that I worked for. I was a GM there, and the bottom line is we had a product that was in market, and we were getting hundreds of signups a day, subscribers every day, and some of these subscriptions were as much as $1,000 a year. And I won't go into what the product was, but it didn't really work. The need was so great, but it was built by some guys who were really talented, but it was just a small, tiny team. You know, we're out fundraising and we're having to like switch from laptop to laptop because it's crashing every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. But the reason that was so effectively, it was just a prototype, right? It was just a demo, even though people were paying us a lot of money, because that was the need it solved. Right. People needed this so badly, they were willing to put up with a piece of software that crashed every 15 minutes. And we raised $8 million on a piece of software that crashed every 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's just that. I mean, that's effectively what we did. So I get it. And then we spent the next 3 months trying to find that memory leak. you have to run. So it would run again.
All right.
So anyway, so I'm like, you've got my email. I'll put it in chat here. Someone wants to reach out to me. Hang on one second. Myself. If anyone wants to talk, reach out anytime. I am happy to help.
Thanks very much, Frank. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And your experiences. Okay, Gita,
Thank
you
you,
want to say
Frank.
goodbye?
Thank you. This was wonderful. Thank you.